Good afternoon. As you are aware, mitigating the risk of spreading COVID-19 during the Congress requires the cooperation of all of us. In line with the COVID-19 prevention concept elaborated by our host country, Japan, and the Secretariat, I'd like to kindly remind you of the following precautionary measures. Fill in the contact tracing information sheet found on your assigned table or seat. Maintain at least 2 meters of physical distance from each other when not seated at your assigned seat, and avoid gathering in groups. Wear your FFP2 mask at all times. You may only decide to take your mask off when you are given the floor. Do not attend the meeting if you are unwell. If you feel ill during a Congress session, contact the medical personnel stationed in each conference room. These measures are in place for the safety of all of us. I thank you for your support and attention.
Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening. My name is Kazumasa Umemoto, and I'm the member of Gaberu supporters. And today, I'd like to have international meeting of prison volunteers. Yes. So thank you very much for coming to our meeting. And now, let me share my screen. Yes. Okay. And so we are. Yes. And okay. Yes, a moment. We are NPO Gaberu supporters, and okay, we cannot share this slide. じゃあちょっと向こうでやってもらう。Okay. Yes. 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 So, I'm sorry, we have technical problem. Yes. So, let me just skip the introduction and let me share the first presenter of our team. The first speaker is Miss Linda Lam from Singapore, and she will show the model case. We can learn from the lessons she has learned in Singapore. So let us welcome Linda Lam to the lecture. Yes. So Linda Lam, could you share your PowerPoint and speaking? Yes, thank you.
Hi, greetings from Singapore to wherever you are. My name is Michael Rodriguez, and together with Linda Lam, we'll be sharing with you what we have been doing at TPV Prison Volunteers in Singapore for our work that is being done, our volunteer work that is being done at Singapore's Changi Prison. We are a group of 22 volunteers, and we started in 2005. So today we are going on to our 16th year of volunteering in prison in Singapore. Our mission is to rehabilitate inmates through public speaking, communication skills program, and also to build their confidence and character by improving their chances of finding employment upon release. This is a work of all of us together in a coordinated effort together with the Singapore Prison Service. So to date, we have a volunteer strength of 22 volunteers. And most of us are currently Toastmasters or former members of Toastmasters. We, to date, since 2005, conducted 54 speak up courses, or like 54 batches, and we have gone through 54 cohort of inmates. And the total inmates trained to date is about 1,080 inmates since the year 2005. As the African proverb says, it's a village to raise a child. So it is with us volunteers when we come here to help our inmates in prison to take over a new leaf as per the mission of our inmates. I would like now to pass to my colleague here, the Lam, to carry on with this presentation from TPV Prison Volunteers in.
Okay, hi. So I'm Linda, and earlier on, who you heard from was Michael Rodriguez, who is the leader of our volunteer group. So we come together and then they get caught and they get sent to prison. And then after many years of sentence, they get released from prison. But unfortunately, they get socially shunned, can't get a job. And hence, it's easy for them to go back to their life, whether it's drug addiction, if not, it's a life of gangsterism. And hence, they would get into bad company and commit the crime again. In our prisons, we often see inmates coming in and out again and again. And hence, the Singapore prison authorities have decided that we need to do more to help the inmates break the cycle of crime. Hence, they started what they call the Yellow Ribbon Project, and its tagline is to help unlock the second prison. So the second prison is when they are released from prison but find that they are still trapped in circumstances where their families and friends shun them and that they can't find a job. So what can we do to really help them turn over a new leaf? In Singapore, we have adopted an approach to rehabilitating inmates, starting with renaming prison officers as captains of lives. Don't just call them prison officers, we call them captains of lives, and their role is to act as a mentor or coach to the inmates to help them steer to a new lease of life. And so through the Yellow Ribbon Project, so for those of you who are familiar with the song Yellow Ribbon, tie a yellow ribbon round the old oak tree, that song was about the acceptance of someone who served a sentence before, and he wanted to know that he would be welcomed home. And so he told his wife, if you welcome me home, please a yellow ribbon round the old oak tree outside our home, and that would be a sign that you welcome me back. And so when he was approaching his home, he saw that lots of yellow ribbons, which was a sign that I really welcome you back. And so we have used that metaphor to name our project. And so the Singapore Prison Services uses the Yellow Ribbon project to have employer engagement by working with small, medium enterprises to provide jobs for them. Also to look into their skills training, because many of them are of low education, so they need some upgrade in skills. And also to engage with the community. So through the form of volunteers and befrienders, we want to embrace them and integrate them back to society. Now, the Singapore Cooperation of Rehabilitative Enterprises, or SCORE, is one such program to help the inmates with jobs upon their release. Now, even though it's not highly paid jobs, but it helps them get into the practice of holding down and to turn up for work. So this is how we slowly integrate them back to society. And one more way is really the prison service volunteer groups, which are one of them. The TPV Prison Volunteers, as introduced by Michael Rodriguez, is probably the only secular group that is non-religious, and our goal is just to help them improve their communication skills. So I wanted to actually share with you Bruce Matthews' story, but because the sharing function isn't working very well, so I'll just tell you what his story is. Now, Bruce is a drug addict, and because of his drug habit, he also committed theft, robbery, stabbing, and he has been in and out of prison 5 times. He found it so hard to change. We came to know Bruce through one of our programs, the Speechcraft, where he attended an 8-week program. And through that, we helped him find his voice and his love to speak. So in the end, he was released from prison. He had to plead for his case why he deserved to be released early. And he managed to convince the officers in charge. And so when he's released, he went to a halfway house, and the pastor of the halfway house asked if he would like to share his story. And that's where he started getting an audience, and the audience loved his story, and there were more and more engagements coming his way. So today, Bruce is working in the academy, but he also does motivational speaking on the side. Recently, I caught up with Bruce and asked him about the program, whether the Toastmasters prison program actually helped him. And this was what he said. Joining Toastmasters in prison was very beneficial for me because in those 8 sessions, I made many exciting discoveries about myself. After my release, it was due to these knowledge and skills I learned during these 8 sessions that gave me the confidence to speak in public and the assurance that I'm going to do great. In 5 days, it'll be 5 years since my release. I'm still giving talks, doing interviews, and being the voice of inmates. And I can tell you this, I'm absolutely loving it. So, what is our Speak Up program about? Now, it's an 8-week program, and we're going to rebuild the confidence and self-esteem of the inmates by giving them a voice. Now, imagine yourself as an inmate. How would life be like behind bars? You know, day in, day out, it's instructions given to you, running your life on a schedule, and your voice is not interested. Nobody's interested to hear what you have to say, your thoughts, your reflections. All this does not have a place. And so we want to give them a voice to help them think about who they really are and who they want to become. So we also impart techniques of how to communicate effectively by teaching them how to structure and deliver a speech properly, because these are the foundations of communication. And then we raise their self-awareness and stoke their desire to change through self-reflection and mini workshops on transformation. So while it is essentially a communications and public speaking program, we often inject themes that are helpful. For instance, how to set goals? How do you plan a life for yourself? How do you rebuild relationships with your loved ones? And equip them with the ability to secure decent jobs by training them to handle interviews confidently. So they have to difficult questions like, why do you have so many tattoos on your body? Have you committed crimes before? Things that need to know how to answer before they actually face their real prospective employer. Through this program, which we have been running for 16 years, we found that there's 4 critical success factors which we would like to share with you. Now, the first one is the unwavering support from the prison authorities. We realized that this program would not work if Singapore prisons had not been so supportive. So one of the things they do is that they have a massive volunteer recruitment program that doesn't just recruit for TPV, but also for the religious groups. Volunteers go through a proper training and orientation to know what are the do's and don'ts and how do we treat the inmates when we're in prisons. And in addition to that, they have a comprehensive reward and recognition system for those who have served as volunteers for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years or more. So you would be treated with a nice meal in a grand hall. You go up to stage to receive a prize certificate for your service. And on the right side, you can see that Michael Rodriguez is receiving a medal, a National Day Award from our minister, Josephine Teo. So the National Day Award is actually quite a prestigious award in Singapore. And this is quite an honor. Now, thirdly, they also provide us with the logistical support for the program. For instance, they would print the program for us and also the workbooks, so the inmates have what they need in order to learn. So these are basic tools, and they would also give us proper learning rooms, so a conducive environment. And finally, at the end of the 8-week program, they would invite prison officials to come and grace the occasion as the officers listen in on the inmates' testimony of what the program has done for it. The inmates also realize that the program is very impactful and has really shifted mindsets. Now, the second critical success is the recruitment of dedicated volunteers. So where do we find these people? Now, we do have a prerequisite. You have to be a Toastmaster, a current or a former Toastmaster to be part of the program, because you are expected to hit the ground running. So as volunteers, you might be assigned to deliver a motivational opening or to deliver a mini workshop, or to teach inmates on how to prepare an icebreaker. And these we expect the volunteers to be able to do easily. So in terms of branding and publicity, we don't really advertise ourselves, but we do have a Facebook page. That's where many of the volunteers or potential volunteers get in touch with us to indicate their interest. And we look for with the human touch, because it's important we recruit volunteers that don't look down on the inmates, but view them as human beings. And fourthly, we have social events to bond the volunteers together. So you can see from the picture we're actually having quite a good time together, and we enjoy each other's company. So we have even trip overseas just to renew the bonds and make the friendships even closer. Finally, the team of volunteers is run by an EXCO, a small team of EXCO, which Michael Rodriguez is head, and I'm also a part of it. So it's important that we actually have regular meetings to make sure that the program is running successfully. Now, the third critical success is that we need a program that works. So we started by using the Speechcraft program. So Toastmasters is a public speaking society with a very established program, and the Speechcraft enables inmates to deliver speeches, 3 speeches in 8 weeks' time. But because over time we have not had continued support from Toastmasters, and hence we had to move away from the Toastmasters program to create our own. And so we have added content in. And some of the typical program segments would include how do you go about writing a resume? How do you answer the questions that your employers ask you? And how do you good eye contact, vocal variety when you speak? And so So we created this resource called Manual, which you can see a picture on the right side. Finally, the fourth critical success factor is the selection and orientation of the candidate program, because we realize that not all inmates are ready for such a program. We do go through a selection process where inmates will be told what the program is about, get to choose whether they want to be a part of it. And if they say yes, they would go through an orientation program where we would enable them to understand what to expect. So there's quite a bit of homework involved. Yes, they have to prepare their speeches, and so in the workbook, they actually have to draft how the speeches would look like, and they have to practice. And so they have to be prepared. Do we get dropouts? We do, but the majority of the inmates do stay with us, and those who do stay on often tell us what an impactful program it is for them. And finally, they would graduate at the end of 8 weeks, and we present them with a certificate, and they would share their testimony. And how do we tap on the resources of the past graduates? Well, the past graduates can come back and join the next batch or the sub-batches of Speak Up by being a model or perhaps an assistant or perhaps an evaluator. So they continue their learning journey with us as long as possible and have a lot to share. And because they are inmates themselves, very often the new program participants find it easier to seek help from them. So wishes. The first wish is for prisons to recognize the humanity in prisoners and adopt a positive pro-learning approach to rehabilitation. We recognize that putting people away doesn't change them. It is by giving them a voice, immersing in a positive environment, encouraging them to change, that is what's going to make the difference. The second one is to give ex-offenders a second chance at rebuilding life, and so to volunteer themselves to make a difference to them. So while we say that the program is to rehabilitate inmates, we realize that the program also rehabilitates members of the public, because public members like us, we get into contact with inmates, we no longer shun them, we see them as human beings who have made just like we do, and so they deserve a second chance. And finally, for Toastmasters International to recognize the value of the work we do, and so that we can build upon the Toastmasters and help other countries and other prisons around the world who is not on the system yet to tap into the Toastmaster system and create a system like we have. So, as mentioned, it takes a village to raise a child, and want to add, and a community to transform an offender. So with that, I end my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you very much, Linda. And this is so kind of model case internationally. So we have learned a lot from them, and maybe we can implement this kind of system in our country too. Yes. So, thank you very much, Linda and Michael, for your presentations. So, we get back to the, the program today. So, firstly, let me introduce myself again. Yes, my name is Kazumasa Memoto, and I'm going to talk about merit of prison volunteers and our program for ourselves and for prisoners. And there are some technical jargons. So let me explain about that. Okay. So the merit of prison volunteers is free of charge. So you don't need any financial support for that. So no expense needed. Yes. And prisoners can meet with students in prisons. And students can meet with prisoners in prisons. So prisoners and students work together to use this program. and both can see the transformation of both. Yes, transformation of prisoner to be good person and transportation of citizens to become acceptable for prisoners to the society. So the society will get ready to support the re-entry of ex-prisoners. Yes. And we use public speaking programs made by Toastmasters International. We are members, or we are former members of a public speaking club called Toastmasters, and Toastmasters International has huge network of people and clubs in 125 countries and more than 165,000 members. Yes. So we train ourselves and we know the program very well. Yes. The program has been implemented and used all over the world for more than 97 years. And then we use that program in prisons. So we help inmates train themselves. Yes. It is interactive program, so inmates can train themselves with each other, and we are helping them. So we use this huge resource of Toastmasters International. Yes. So this program is very much useful and good for the rehabilitation of prisoners, but not only for prisoners. We are using for ourselves. We are mostly business people or all walks of society. So we use this skill. Yes. We train impromptu speech and storytelling and giving feedback, praise and advice. So with impromptu speech, you can expand new viewpoints with new ideas. And with storytelling, you can construct your story. Your story is your life. And then it gives you understanding of self and others, and praise and advice. So people tend to think feedback is criticism. But with this program, criticism becomes empowerment. Yes. Then we can change ourselves, and also prisoners can change themselves. Okay. So there are many variety of programs used in prisons. Yes. There are short programs and long programs. So the Singapore members showed some programs there. Yes. So then the best practice have been explained. And today we have 2 ex-inmates, ex-prisoners in this room. Yes. The one is from United States. Okay. Yes. So he was in prison. But now, and he got out of prison, but now with internet, you cannot hide your criminal record. So then what you should do is you need to express your transformation with the skill of public speaking. It's a show and tell approach to the public. Yes. So next presenter is Mr. Joshua Miguel. So Joshua, yes, could you introduce yourself and start your presentation? Thank you. Let me finish my sharing of the, yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Are you all set?
Please start.
Okay. Thank you, President. Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning. It's an honor to be here. How do we break the cycle of incarceration? Why is it that when people leave prison, they reoffend and go back again? Is it that they like prison? Or is it that they lack the skills, support, and acceptance that's needed to be successful? I've been convicted 4 times and spent a total of 14 and a half years in prison. In 2014, while incarcerated, I found myself joining a program called Toastmasters International. That's where I learned what public speaking can do for someone with limited resources and very little hope. My only wish was that I had a second chance. Growing up, I dreamed of being a football player, an artist, maybe even a lawyer or a doctor. What I didn't want to be was a convicted felon. That wasn't on the list. Just kind of happened. See, it's not me. I mean, not really. Kinda. You see, I'm a convicted felon. But something happened in this last incarceration that changed the direction of my life. I tried a lot of rehabilitation programs while I was inside. These programs always addressed the reasons that brought me to prison. My substance abuse issues, aggressive behavior. Treatment gave me the ability to understand why I started using drugs in the first place. It's because I didn't like the way I felt. I didn't like the way I viewed myself. But really, it's because I didn't believe in myself. Anger management and violent reduction programs, they supplied me with the skills and tools to walk away from an aggressive situation, heated argument, or accusations about my past, which would usually turn into an altercation or a fist fight. But what happened when I can't walk away anymore? The only program that helped me with the fundamental tool for change and communication is Toastmasters. The program changed my life. I always struggled with putting the right words together to explain what I did and why I did it. How can people understand me, help me, and appreciate what I can contribute to society if I can't express myself? I need people to see me, not my criminal record. Toastmasters helped me to overcome the roadblocks of my past. It allowed me to build confidence in myself, something I never had. The promise of Toastmasters? Accepting a really lousy speaker and helping them turn into a communicator that is invaluable. Initially, I didn't want to try public speaking. I started scared and nervous. I was afraid of embarrassing myself. I was going to be speaking in front of volunteers that I didn't know and inmates who, let's face it, you really don't want to tell a lot of things to. And this wasn't on that prison bucket list. But the promise of Toastmasters overcame the fear of public speaking. This was the time when I could leave behind who I am and move towards who I want to be. The first speech is an icebreaker. This is where I introduced myself to the audience. My problem was, how do I tell the audience that I'm a convicted felon, but I'm actually a nice guy, a normal guy? My strategy was simple. Just tell the truth. In this speech, I was going to be telling the audience about when I caught a break. I became a licensed plumber. I mean, that was a very proud moment in my life. But like most new speakers, I was reading my notes instead of engaging the audience. And about halfway down the first page, I couldn't read my writing no more. I started to stumble and fumble. I skipped a whole section of my speech until I could finally find a word that I could recognize and start reading again. I just pretended like nothing happened. It was an absolute disaster. But the best part of that speech was that it was over. But for those of you that don't know the program Toastmasters, giving the speech is the first part of the process. Next comes the evaluation. My evaluator was a Toastmaster or volunteer, a veteran, an expert speaker. This person was going to rip me apart. Only 3 suggestions, the evaluator said when he began his review. 1, if you're going to read your speech, pause, look up, See if the audience is still in the room. 2, practice, practice, practice. If you practice your speech enough, you can use bullet points and engage your audience more. 3, it shows grit to continue after you stumble. Nice job, speaker. After the meeting, the volunteer came up and told me I did a good job again and reminded me to practice. I learned that a good evaluator points out where you can improve and gives you suggestions where you can get better. They don't judge and they don't criticize. They just help you get better. So that's why I went back every week. Every week I watched and I studied the meeting roles and the speakers. I wanted to become better. I started to realize the importance of speaking and relationships. And I thought to myself, the most important communication we do is to the people we care about, the people we love. Shortly after my marriage, I was arrested. 9 months later, my son was born. I was sentenced to 10 to 12 years in prison. All I wanted was to be a father, a husband, someone accepted by the community. See, that's why I gave myself to the program. I wanted to become a better speaker. I wanted to become better all around. See, I didn't see the improvements in myself, but my fellow Toastmasters, they assured it. After one of the meetings, Dave, a volunteer, asked me to be a mentor. I believe my facial expression showed that I was confused. He explained that a mentor worked closely with other members in the program. I would be working with inmates like myself to help them to become better speakers. After some consideration, I said, yeah. And I started another personal journey in this Toastmaster program. I met with other inmates throughout the week, and I would help them with the planning and practicing and presenting of their speeches. We would encourage each other, and we would laugh at each other's mistakes quite often. But we all had one goal. We wanted to get out of prison, and we wanted to stay out. See, as a mentor, you're required to give more speeches than other members. You set the example for others to follow. I started to see my own personal growth. I became aware of my body language and what it said to people around me. I wanted my words to match my actions. I no longer viewed the audience as strangers, people that I was afraid to speak in front of, or inmates that you didn't want to tell things to. I saw a community that looked beyond my past and recognized who I can be. Now, with each speech I gave, I began to choose my words carefully. I wanted to express myself clearly, something I never did in the past. I felt like I was leaving behind my past criminal life right there on the floor. I started to feel different, think different, just see things differently. I practiced all the time. No matter what I was involved with, I wanted to become a better communicator. And when I was asked why, my response was very simple. When I get out of prison, I wanted to stay out. And communication is the key. It's the key to expressing myself in a socially acceptable way. It's the key to building relationships with family and the community. It's the key to adding value to my job. Communication is the key. In November of 2019, I was released from prison early. One of the first things I did, I found the Toastmasters Club, and I went to a meeting. I was encouraged to do that when I was in prison. I met with members in the club, I introduced myself, and I was honest. I started participating in Toastmasters while I was in prison. I wanted to become a better communicator. I thought that I was going to be rejected. That's usually what happens when I start to bring up my past. But instead, I was accepted. This program is designed to improve such things like communication, critical thinking, listening skills, giving feedback in a positive way. These skills also increase your confidence, your self-esteem, but mostly, it helps you face all your fears. You learn what suggestions can do to improve your speech and yourself. You understand what you understand what being part of a team is about. You look at the other members in the group, and you put them first, and yourself always second. You see, I started to, with every speech, let go of the negative thoughts I had about myself. And I started to focus on and transform into who I truly wanted to be. I no longer view myself as a convicted felon, someone who's scared to talk about his past. I see myself as a volunteer, a prison volunteer at that, someone with some experience. Now I face a whole new set of obstacles in my life, obstacles that most volunteers know all too well. How do I get into prison to teach a public speaking program to make a difference in someone else's life? Toastmasters, they brought me these opportunities, but the volunteers, they brought and sustained Toastmasters. Without volunteers, there is no meeting. See, I'm better off, and my fellow inmates are better off because a few volunteers, they donated their time. I was given and provided with a life-changing experience, and all I want to do is to share that with every prisoner around the world. If I had one wish, a request, it would be to ask this United Nations to look into and to help remove the obstacles and barriers that restrict volunteers for access in prisons, to help teach speaking programs like Toastmasters International, Gavel Support Club, and the Speak Up program. Communication is the key, and it should be offered to all prisoners so that they can be given a second chance, just like I have. Thank you for having me, Mr. Moderator.
Okay, thank you very much, Josh, yes, for your wonderful speech and sharing your very precious experience with us. Yes. Okay, then we move to next speaker. The next speaker will share his experience in Japan. Yes, so he was also ex-prisoner. He's ex-prisoner, and he's also a member of our volunteer group, Gavel Supporters. Yes, in NPO Gavel Supporters, we have 60 members, 60 volunteers, and 2 out of 60 are ex-prisoners. So, because our organization is not a governmental official volunteer organization, so we have some contract with the warden of prison, and we can do this. Yes. So let me introduce Mr. Masao Nakaigawa. Yes. So please, yes, start your speech. Okay. Let me close my window. Okay. Okay. Yes. Please.
Okay. 5 years ago, I was on the verge of suicide when I was arrested for violating the laws about child porn. I had been a teacher for over 20 years. One day, when I was about to drive to school with my daughter, the police waited for me. I was arrested and taken to the jail far away from my hometown. I was rather a positive person, but in jail, I felt my life had ended. I caused a great deal of trouble and shame to my family, my students, and colleagues. One of my daughters was a student of the school where I had worked, and the other daughter had just passed their entrance exam into the school. I agonized about the future of my family. I couldn't think about the victims at that time. In jail, I couldn't eat for the first few days. No appetite. All I wanted to do is to die. Then my family came to see me and said, "You have supported us for a long time, so we've decided to support you." I was so relieved. I decided to live for them. The president of the school also came and said, "We have decided to support your daughters. They have nothing to do with your crime, so don't worry." I cried out louder than I had never done. Tears flowed like a waterfall. I decided to be a respectable person again. During my 15-month sentence, I had enough time to think of myself. What made me violate the laws? Of course, I knew my actions were illegal. I kept thinking deeper about the case and realized that I had made up a stupid, selfish excuse that I had done it for the girl's benefit, and believed that the end justifies the means. I had to change my perspective into the one that both the purpose and the means must be good and legal. The other day, I read an article of sexual harassment by an assistant college professor who said, "I touched the body of the female student because I wanted her to focus on my teaching. I showed her a picture of love hotels. I recognized that it was reminiscent of a sexual image, but I wanted her to broaden her world." This is a good example of how selfish justification triggers the crime. I also realized that I was obsessed with this kind of mindset. For example, when I woke up late to be in time for work, I couldn't help driving above the speed limit like that. It is not easy to change one's perspective, but changing that mindset is the best way to prevent recidivism. Now I feel sorry for my victims. I was bad, and I hope that they recover and live happy lives. Life in the prison was difficult. Most of us lived in a single room. We were forbidden to talk except during the 30-minute exercise time. Outside of the precious half hour, we were not allowed to smile or look at others, even during lunchtime or other times. Prison officers explained the reason, because some inmates had bad communication skills. Even a glance could cause big trouble. As an educator, I realized the importance of competent communication. Inmates are ordered to say yes all the time. If you argue, you'll be punished for challenging a prison officer. It was a stressful environment. Don't do it is only patience, and it doesn't last long. I thought something else which makes us positive was also needed for rehabilitation. When I was told to finish the factory work and move to the 2-week pre-release education, I was happy. Almost 20 people were in the same room. We talked a lot and worried about our future. Some inmates didn't have enough savings. Others are isolated from family or friends. Others had no idea how to get a job. Many inmates had low self-esteem, and some gave up reintegrating into society. Day by day, I was getting anxious about going out from the prison. I was afraid of outside world. I remember that I was lucky to be with other inmates because they supported me. I felt that what we needed was encouragement and changing us into positive. We needed help. After I was released on parole, I tried to contribute to the public good and help people, but mostly ended in being rejected. I feel that most Japanese offer little to no support for perpetrators' reintegration into society, especially in a local area. It is difficult to find support in society because if someone supports us, they may be criticized. People don't want me to show up in public and want to continue to punish me, even though I served my time. So, I started to donate blood regularly and studied psychology and philosophy. Now I am a qualified counselor and coach. I wanted to help victims and perpetrators, but in order to help others, I had to be independent and a respectable person first. I worked hard to be a president of a company, and 3 years ago, I established an incorporated organization to help people. Last year, mayor of my city, governor of my prefecture, and president of my university awarded me certifications of appreciation for my social contributions. That's my honor. Accordingly, my supporters have been increasing all over the world. Through the internet, I found a great organization that provides ex-inmates with housing, education, and job leads. I became friends with the founder, and he asked me to teach how to change their mindset, improve their communication skills, and raise self-esteem. I became a teacher there. I wanted to encourage not only ex-offenders, but also inmates. One of my supporters introduced me to Mr. Umemoto, founder of Gavel Supporters. Then, as a member, I visited Kawagoe Juvenile Prison 6 times last year, and this year twice already. Since Kawagoe Juvenile Prison is where I was incarcerated, I was so happy and honored to be accepted as an educator of the inmates. So far, our program is severely limited. We are only allowed one 60-minute lesson for one group on the day before they are released. With more class time, we could do so much more. Our class size ranges from 5 to more than 20. Not always all the inmates in class can speak. Nevertheless, I can still see some improvement through our program. Given a chance to talk about themselves safely, they regain power and became positive. I sometimes still feel selfish and arrogant, but through this communication program, I can learn many other perspectives. It is good for both inmates and educators. It is also good for both general people and ex-inmates. I want more people to join our program. To successfully reintegrate into society, inmates must have supporters during incarceration and after. The volunteer-led communication program is just started in Japan. Learning from advanced Gavel Club or Toastmasters programs, we will offer more effective program in more prisons. Gavel supporters uses the skills of Toastmasters, which offers hope, the opportunity to rebuild self-confidence, to gain skills useful upon returning home, and a second chance. Toastmasters program offers inside prison all over the world have demonstrated the benefits. We ask for the same opportunity as other countries permit to offer a proven rehabilitation program in Japanese prisons. That can be life-changing. I'm still on the way and need more supporters' help, but I am happy and honored as a member of Gaber supporters. I will spend the rest of my life contributing society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Masao, for your wonderful presentation of your experience and also as a volunteer member. Yes, thank you very much. And now, from the point of view of members of volunteer groups, yes, we have some members here, and I'd like to ask a volunteer leader in the United States, Massachusetts, Susan Tordera, as an interviewer and commentator. So let us welcome Susan Tordera. Yes. So Susan.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody.
Hello. Yes.
Thank you to Masao and Josh, especially for sharing your stories. It takes so much courage to come before a group of people on a worldwide stage and share your greatest mistakes. And I really honor you for doing that. And hearing your story makes me a better volunteer in prison. So we have some other volunteers present in the room. Erica, who is in Japan, and Jennifer from the Philippines. And Jennifer, would you speak about why you started to volunteer in Toastmasters in prison?
Thank you, Susan. I'm Jennifer, and I'm from the Philippines. And before, I had this experience of volunteering in an orphanage or home for the ages or schools, but I have never thought of volunteering in prison. I think this is commonly overlooked place to volunteer. I thought that prisoners choose to be there, and it's a dangerous place to go. So when I heard about Gaber volunteers and what they do, it encouraged me to be part of it. I realized that those people in the prison need a second chance. We are all subject to changes, and I think those inmates have the right to be given a second chance. And I believe through this program, they construct their speech, then they construct their way of thinking that leads to the change of their lives for the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Did you feel any changes in you? How long have you been volunteering?
I have been volunteering for, I think this is my 4th year.
Could you describe how you changed as a result of volunteering?
It's really totally different when you work with kids in an orphanage and with the inmates. I think you will feel more compassionate because they have gone through lives. And I think it's really make me realize that they really need a second chance. Yeah. And it changes my way of thinking too.
So not only did you have impact on the people in your program, but they had an impact on you, it sounds like. And that's been my experience also as a volunteer. It changed my life in ways I never expected and broadened my perspective too. So Erica, you volunteer with Kazumasa Umamoto and with Masao in Japanese prison?
Yes, I am. Thank you for pointing me. Why I decided to join the Gaber supporters as a prison volunteer? Because I am one victim. About 25 years ago, I lost a house because someone set the house on fire. I lost everything. My house, my clothes, my everything, including my hope. It takes about 10 years until I feel safety at home. Because we still don't know who is arsonist. That's why. I doubt everyone and feel so scared every time at home. One day, one of my priests gave me a book called Trauma and Recovery, which written by Judith Harmon. It said, the first step to recovery is safety. So I decided to support prisoner to avoid second offense because I want to stay safety and safety for everyone. When I visited Kawagoe prison and I met prisoners, I didn't scared at all because their speeches are so touched. Someone talked about his loving family and someone talked about his hope. Then I really understand that. I realized that we are the same language and feeling. And they need confidence to overcome some difficulties. If they become a better speakers, then they will become a better communicator and become successful in life in his future, and for sure. So what I can do for now and support them and avoid the second offense that I want to feel safety every time. Thank you.
It must have been devastating to lose everything you owned and your home.
Yeah.
And I think it takes a lot of courage to go and meet people who may have committed a similar crime. But it sounds like you recognized their humanity and you were able to connect with them.
Yes,
what really struck me about what you said was you lost your hope. And I know I've been a prison volunteer since 2009. And when you talk about hope, that's a gift that we can bring into prison so that they can have hope in rebuilding their lives. Like Masao was saying, how he felt so desperate and hopeless, and he and his other friends in prison worried about how they were going to survive after prison. And our program really provides the skills so people can have a life different from their past. So, Linda, would you speak a little bit about how important listening is in our programs and what a gift it is to each other?
Okay, so I think the giving inmates a voice is what is the special value that we bring to the program, because if you put yourself in the shoes of the inmate, what kind of communication are you subject to? When I spoke to Bruce and asked him how was prison life like, he told me that in prison everyone had to act tough. They have to speak tough, they have to act tough. And that's a very tiring thing to do. So when we as volunteers go into prisons, and our main role is to listen, and we listen with so much respect that they really feel that they're being heard by us, it actually does something to them and their psychology. They feel respected, they feel dignified, and that is, to me, really crucial and fundamental for change to happen, because we can only change and transform when we believe that we're worth something. And the best way to have people believe, or the best way for people to convince us that we're worth something, is when they are willing to listen to us. So that's what we're doing for the inmates.
Thank you. Your program is a real model for the rest of the world. And one of the things you have in Singapore is the cooperation of the Singapore government and the prisons to allow you in with such freedom and to deliver your program. And you have so many volunteers. It's really great. Sometimes our prisons here make it difficult for volunteers to enter, and there's a lot of roadblocks. And I like to say it's a three-legged stool in order to have a successful program where you need first the prison authorities. Nothing happens without them and their cooperation and their guidance. You need volunteers, and a lot of people are afraid to go into prison. They don't realize that there are people like Josh and Masao or like us. I could be talking on my cell phone and have an accident and be charged with manslaughter and end up in prison myself. So it's very enlightening, I think, to go into prison and realize that we're all the same and how listening is so important.
I would like to just say, Singapore prisons is a very strict system, and it's not that we can easily go in and out. There's actually an extremely stringent clearance system, and when we submit our names to here, it has to be under a particular program, and they would do extensive background checks to make sure to be made, and then we go for orientation program. And then when we go actually into prisons, there's this whole series of checks using thumbprint identification and all that. So actually, Singapore prisons is probably really, really strict, right up there with the prisons in the world. It's just that with the prison authority, with the prison authority support, it makes it all the easier because we don't have to push our way, unlike our friends in Japan and perhaps even in you guys in US, because of they are. In fact, what they want from us to have more volunteers so that we can run more concurrent programs for them. So actually, that's their wish.
We have the same requirements to get into prison, the background check and the training and everything. Kazumasa Umamoto, would you say a few words about your motivation? What has driven you so strongly to reach out to other prison Toastmaster volunteers in the world and to be so committed and dedicated to bringing this program to prisons in Japan?
Okay, thank you very much for giving me the question. Yes, when I read an article on Toastmasters magazine, which is monthly magazine for members of Toastmasters, I read about Prison Toastmasters Club. And as a member, I have experienced my change, my transformation of myself to be confident and to live life better. Then it can be applied to the prisoners to change their lives. And then after that, I visited United States with this Takehiko next to me and learned from prisoners there as a volunteer. Yes. And I saw their transformation from bad person to good person. Yes, people can change. And in prison, it is very drastic change. Yes, transformation, real transformation. So this is why I started this volunteer work and group in Japan. Yes, that's my story. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. I think I have a hard time explaining to people the meaning and the transformation that happens in me and other volunteers when we go to prison, because it really is profound and it is a two-way street. Kazumasa, thank you for your leadership, and I will turn it back over to you now.
Okay, thank you very much, Susan, for your wonderful question, and thank you very much for wonderful answers. And now we move to next session, and I'd like to have another speaker from Japan. Yes, his name is Takehiko Kawame, and he is a prison volunteer. Yes. Okay. Before that, I'm sorry. Susan, may I ask you to explain something about the program which is held in United States. And because of COVID-19, most of the prisons in the United States is closed for prisoners, shut down. And even in Japan, only 2 volunteers are allowed to enter the prison. So we need some extra program, like using an internet. So Susan, could you share the latest information in the United States?
Yes, sure. Prisons never act quickly. And as you know, we're celebrating our 1 year of this pandemic. And we haven't been back in prison live in 1 year. And during that time, they finally came up with the idea to have a cart with wheels, with a computer and a camera and a microphone, so that Zoom meetings could be conducted. Meetings could be conducted with the volunteers at home and the people incarcerated in a classroom or on a tablet. And when you're at home, you have to have a completely clean background. No telephones are allowed in the room, and you can give away no indication of your identity or where you live, because prisons like to keep that wall up between the volunteer for good reasons. And so they're working on having this cart that will be used for other volunteer programs. And in the United States, 70% of all volunteer programs are religious. I know Linda said in Singapore, they're the only program that's not religious. And in the US, 30% are non-religious. And this cart could also be used to deliver religious programs, book clubs, tutoring perhaps. So we're very excited. They're running a test. And as I said, the prison system moves very slowly. Time is always on their side. They always seem to have many customers, and some of whom come back too often to prison. So we're optimistic that this program will work. I believe a corrections officer also has to be in the room. I haven't been in on the testing, but I'm optimistic that it's going to work for everybody. Kazumasa.
Okay, thank you very much, Susan. Yes. So in the United States, they use latest technology. Unfortunately, in Japan, we only can use telephone and fax for correspondence to prisons, but we will change. Yes. Anyway, the next speaker from Japan is Mr. Takehiko Kawame. Yes. Okay. In Japan, in our group, we have 60 volunteers, as I said, but 6 out of 60 volunteers are lawyers. Lawyers, they send people to prisons. Bad. Yes. But they don't know afterwards. Okay. Sorry. That's a joke. Okay. So, Takehiko, from the viewpoint of lawyer and as a prison volunteer, please summarize our session and maybe you can talk about future perspective. So let's welcome Takehiko. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Memoto. First, we Japanese lawyers defend prisoners. Okay, you can't misunderstand that. Okay. Anyway, I'd like to give you some comment about your great speakers. Firstly, the first speaker, Linda, gave us a great speech, well constructed, and I can understand how the Singapore government dedicated to prison volunteer work. And I can feel, additionally, I can feel the good atmosphere of volunteer group members from the picture of the group members, which the Linda showed during the presentations. And the Speak Up manual, I can understand that the Speak Up manual is great materials for education for prisoners. We Japanese prison volunteer Gaberu supporters don't have such great materials, but I feel that I have to do something or something to make something like that. Thank you very much. And next, Joshua. I believe such opportunity is really, really precious because under the observation of prison officers, we can't know the real comment, real feeling of prisoners, right? But fortunately, we have two ex-prisoners in this meeting. And one of the ex-prisoner is Joshua. And Joshua describes the feeling of prisoners. How do inmates feel about prison volunteer work and how meaningful they are? And I'm very motivated by his speech. And the next speaker, Mr. Nakaigawa, gave us, he also gave us the experience of Japanese prison ex-prisoners. As you know, Japanese prison is known as a very strict institute. He incited that in Japanese prison, you can't smile, right? You can't smile. Really, really tough time, tough experience. But on the other hand, we can do something good for Japanese prisoners. Yes, our prison volunteers are 6 members, and the ex-prisoners joined our club. So I believe we have very good future in these activities. In this meeting, we can compare each country's volunteer work, and I'm pretty sure that all members in this meeting find a good and new idea for the next step for the prisoners in the world. Hopefully, we have the next opportunity to hold a meeting like this and find a new way and ideas for prisoners and for us, because as Umemoto said, prison volunteer work can change not only prisoners but also us volunteers, the way of thinking, the attitude for the others. So hopefully we have the next meeting, and the next meeting in Singapore, maybe. Yes, but I really, really appreciate for all speakers and members in this meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Takehiko, for sharing your view of as a lawyer. Yes, since we have a lawyer or some lawyers in our group, the negotiation with prison and local government and prison officers was very easy, and we could also get the help of politicians to implement our program in our country. Yes, thank you very much. And now I'd like to move to the last session, question and answer session. Okay. Yes. So the question said, so if you have any question, please raise a hand or write a comment on the screen. Yes. Okay. Yes. So do you have any questions so far? Yes. Yes. No, please ask any question. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Of course, I'm not logged in, but
Yes.
my name is Stephen Kampyongo. I'm a minister from Zambia. Of course, a politician whose job it is to look after the police, prisons, immigration, and other law enforcement agencies. I've followed the discussions very fruitful discussions. And to those of you who are volunteers, I want to just commend you for the work you're doing. Because one of the challenges we have world over when it comes to inmates that come out of prison facilities is reintegration into communities. That has been a challenge. And more often than not, you find these inmates getting to recidivism. Like the ex-prisoner from the United States said, its question is, do perpetual prisoners enjoy staying in prison? Or it's the failure to have means for them to stay in communities where they've reintegrated? Or is it community rejecting them? So that volunteers are doing to create confidence in these inmates becomes very critical. We are now transforming what we call prisons to become reformatory institutions. Because if you take someone who offended society into prison, you don't transform their mindset, their jail term comes to an end, they will get back to society where they will be rejected. And when they feel rejected, the fear that the former inmate spoke about of feeling insecurity around yourself is what culminates into recidivism, offending again, so that probably you go back to a society where, whether you are rejected or not, you are able to exist. So we have what we call Mandela rules. As you know, Nelson Mandela was one of the senior politicians on the African continent who spent most of his life, lawyer as well, the lawyer, spent much of his time in the prisons. So he helped develop what we call Mandela rules of how we better the correctional facilities, which are prisons in this case. And so they are helping, I think, in shaping the programs, reformatory programs of the offenders. You imagine like the former inmates in Japan here, the teacher invested his time and gained the trust of those people that he was teaching and ended up offending. And life changes upside down. How do we get to rehabilitate such an individual so that he gets back to what he was doing and gain confidence from the people? So really sitting here as a policymaker, it's been an insightful engagement, and the programs that the volunteers are doing is using to form policy changes with them to manage our correctional facilities. And mind you, most of the African countries will tell you that the prison facilities are heavily congested. I heard the gentleman saying the Japanese facilities, people don't smile. The conditions, the environment, is what makes people to feel that way. But that's where we need to start from. What sort of environment do we create within these facilities? Because it's that environment which helps in the programs of reforming the minds of inmates, make them positive thinkers, so that when they are coming out to go into society, they are already transformed. And so there's a lot of work to be done. But what's very important is the conciliatory programs. You spoke about, the dear lady spoke about how she lost everything. Her house burnt down, property lost. What would you be saying if someone sat in front of you and confessed that I committed this crime? How ready are you to forgive them? So it's those programs post-prison life that must be holistic. You people and then reconcile them. The society they offended. And for me, these are very key programs. So I've enjoyed myself listening to each presentation, each submission, and through my work, I get to visit prisons and get to hear the challenges. Back home in Zambia, we are the first, I think, sitting as a minister to open a new facility, because spending money on prison facilities is a challenge for every government who wants to care about these people who offended society, and you can't put money in there. But because of the changes and having a president who is positive thinking, I have been supported to build new facilities with the environment that is required for reformatory programs. And so for you volunteers, also focus on juvenile offenders. It's very key. Juvenile offenders who still have got a life because of the experience we have is children some offend not with intent, but offend for reasons. Peer pressure and just probably the environments around them get them to offend knowingly, unknowingly more time, and not understanding the laws they are breaking. So I have enjoyed, in short, the submissions and experiences shared by those that are in volunteer work and those that have benefited from this work, because then you are giving an encouragement to those who life ends with being in prison, and make them understand that being in prison could even be a game changer for the positive life to come. And that's very, very important.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Minister of Zambia. Yes. Okay, now we are connected from Africa to Japan. Yes, all over the world. Yes, thank you very much. Now the closing time is coming. So let me conclude today's session. Yes, by saying thank you for everyone. And now, yes, thank you everyone. And yes, we are volunteers. We are volunteers helping inmates. Yes, and in your country, you can do it because our program is everywhere, all over the world. So you can use this program. Maybe you can be a member at first and learn the skills, and then you can use. Yes. Okay. Yes. So general students and prisoners can work together for the better world. Yes. So please support us by recognizing us. Yes. Thank you very much for your cooperation, and let me adjourn today's meeting. Thank you very much.